Alright guys, what's going on? So today I'm going to be talking to you guys about one of my favorite things in Destiny's history, and that's factions. So if you haven't been around for a while in Destiny, like if you've started playing in the last like 5 or 6 years, you probably don't even know what factions really are. And even if you started playing around the time of Splicer when they were actually relevant in the story, you may still not have a complete understanding of what they are unless you've tried to look further into it. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about them, kind of giving a recap of what they were like in Destiny 1 and giving you guys the lore behind every single one of them and what their ideologies were and what they stood for. And before I get into it, I just want to say, Bungie, if anyone at Bungie happens to be watching this video, please consider bringing factions back. If you guys are making Destiny 3, please put the factions in it. I don't care about the story implications, I really don't. I want these factions to exist because they were one of my favorite things from Destiny 1. So now that I've got that out of the way, let's get into it. So originally in Destiny 1 there were three factions. There was Dead Orbit, New Monarchy, and Future War Cult. Basically, outside of their ideologies, you could pledge to one of these three factions in Destiny 1. At the beginning of the game, all you had to do was just buy a class item and equip it, but then eventually they made it so you could actually pledge to these factions. And when you rank them up, you have a chance of getting some very rare cosmetic rewards like shaders, ships, emblems, things of that nature. There's even a sparrow. And you also have the chance, obviously, to get weapons and armor that are branded around these, some of which were very strong back in the day, like the Hung Jury, which you will definitely recognize if you play Destiny 2 today, but it was stronger in Destiny 1 back in the day. The Wormwood from Future War Cult. And back in the early days of Destiny, there was a shotgun from New Monarchy called, I believe, the Judgment that was really strong, and a hand cannon called the Red Hand that was really nice as well. But during Destiny 1's first year, there wasn't a lot of content in the game. Basically, you had the weekly Nightfall, the two raids that were in the game, and whatever else was being added into the game at the time, like House of Wolves and stuff like that. But for the most part, there wasn't a ton of content being trickled in, so a lot of the more hardcore Destiny players fell in love with the faction grind and chasing the carrot, which is faction shaders and ships, which were obviously incredibly rare cosmetics at the time that had a very low drop rate, and very few players ever acquired them within the game's first year. Around the time of Taken King, they did make these cosmetics a lot more common, but still, they were something that you would have to sink ungodly amounts of time into the game in order to obtain. Alright, so as for what these factions actually stood for, we're going to start with Dead Orbit, and all of this information is coming from Destinypedia. For anyone that's curious, you can go read about it yourself. So again, starting with Dead Orbit, members of Dead Orbit intend to escape an already dying Earth before the darkness' return, as they've given up on the Traveler and put little faith into the city's ability to hold against a major attack. While they recognize that such a move could be very costly in terms of lives, they see no other alternative for survival and instead put their faith in finding enough Golden Age technology in vaults and abandoned shipyards to allow them to escape and to form a new livelihood and new homeworld. It also goes on to talk about their sort of coexistence slash rivalry with New Monarchy, saying that they are also even willing to cross New Monarchy's legal authority to achieve this end, but they also recognize that they will need to bring Guardians to their cause in order to fight against future threats. As far as their color scheme goes, which is one of the big selling points on all of these factions, to be honest with you, Dead Orbit came with a color scheme of blacks, whites, and kind of like shades of gray that would be filtered in, but it was mostly just black and white. Alright, moving on to the next, and personally my favorite, which is New Monarchy. So New Monarchy's color scheme is red and white in Destiny 1, and in Destiny 2 it does incorporate more gold, but you don't really see the gold at all in Destiny 1. The idea behind New Monarchy is that they are a pro-city faction that believes in law and order. They hope to create a golden age and believe in humanity's ability to overcome all hardships. While the future war cult may have ended with the establishment of the consensus, New Monarchy still aims to place an enlightened monarchy in charge of the city in place of the current fragile alliance between factions. New Monarchy's executors are also expected to follow a strict set of laws on how to represent their faction and identify the one true ruler. And to further explain New Monarchy, here is a quote from the Allegiance recruitment speech. "What separates us from the darkness? It is neither our technology nor our strength in battle. It is our minds, civilization, and potential. Why else would the Traveler have chosen us? The last city can be more than a cradle of refugees. It cries out for a guiding hand that can bring out its best." And lastly, we have Future War Cult, which if you've played Destiny over the last several years, then there's a chance that this is probably one of the factions that you're familiar with the most because they're the one that's had the most actual implications on the story of Destiny. The Future War Cult believes that the war with the darkness is inevitable, whether they stay on Earth or attempt to flee. Therefore, they must be ready to fight. They are also deeply concerned with fate and whether or not it is possible to alter history itself. The cult is led by a group called the Inner Circle. Now, as far as what's actually happened with Future War Cult in Destiny's history that you may be familiar with, the leader of Future War Cult, Lakshmi, is actually very relevant in Destiny, like as far as the story goes. So basically, how this story goes is back in Season of the Splicer, which was a couple seasons before Witch Queen released. Lakshmi attempted to throw a coup against the city because we started trying to befriend Fallen and allowing them to come into the city, and she did not like that. So she naturally tried to throw a coup against the city. And as for anyone who's curious as to how this actually turned out, well, basically what happened was Lakshmi tried to utilize a Vex portal to the last city to drive out the Fallen that we were befriending, unintentionally allowing the Vex to enter and attack the city, so went completely awry, and the Vex invasion force was subsequently defeated by the city's forces, but Lakshmi was killed by the Vex before they could arrive. And as far as canonic lore goes, this is the reason why the factions all fled the city in the first place and are no longer in Destiny 2. Which, for my money, is one of the worst things to happen to the game, but I mean, it is what it is. So now that I've explained what all of the factions were and what they stood for and all their beliefs and stuff, I just want to say this. Factions were, again, one of my favorite things in Destiny, and I genuinely still miss them a lot. Like, it feels like the game just is more empty without their presence. And I'm not like a writer for Bungie or anything, but I genuinely think there's plenty of ways that they could introduce these factions back into the story. And honestly, they don't even really need to be part of the story. Like in Destiny 1, they really weren't like a prevalent force as far as that goes. Like I just explained to you the lore and all of that stuff is like probably actually visible in game. Like they probably talk about it. But in Destiny 1, they never actually had like any real implications on the game. They were more so of just like a side thing where you would go and pick a faction and you would say, hey, I really like Future War Cult or I really like New Monarchy or Dead Orbit or whatever, and then you would pledge to them and gain reputation with them, and you would chase the rare cosmetics that they had. Maybe there was a weapon that one of them had that you really wanted, or maybe it was like a meta weapon and you felt like you needed to have it, so you would go align to that faction. But generally speaking, I feel like most people actually had a faction that they really liked and they kind of, aligned with. In addition to this, there were exotic class items that you could earn. These required you to be a pretty high rank with the factions, I believe. I forget exactly what rank you had to be to get it, but by the time you finished the lengthy quest that it took to get this, you would probably be a pretty high rank with them regardless. And these class items were added in Taken King, by the way, so they didn't exist for the first years of the game, or sorry, first year of the game rather, but they were added and they did add quite a bit to the game as far as longevity goes and just having something to do. That's really the whole idea behind factions, is just that it's something extra that isn't like at the forefront or anything like that, but it adds depth to the game and it gives you a reason to keep playing the game after the fact when you've already completed most of the content that the game has to offer. Like I said, for a great deal of players, this was actually something that kept people playing and kept them engaged during the droughts of Destiny 1's first year, which, again, there wasn't a lot to do during that time. You really just had a couple raids and a nightfall to run every week, and then it was off to just go grind strikes and stuff like that. So they added a chase while you were doing the things that you would already be doing in the game. And in a world where Destiny doesn't really have a lot of cosmetics that are actually earnable in game, like I know a lot of them have gone to the Eververse store and stuff like that, and I understand Bungie has to make money. I'm not sitting here making like a negative Eververse video or anything like that. Like I'm not trying to get deep into the weeds in this video. This is about factions. This is something that could really help Destiny as far as the cosmetic earnable rewards go if they were to bring back factions. And I'm not saying it has to be in Destiny 3 necessarily. Like you could, in any update that Bungie has, going in the future, they could literally just slap factions in it and add reputation and, earnable cosmetics that you kind of have to grind for, and I genuinely think the game would be better for it the day that happened. In Destiny 2, Bungie attempted to make factions relevant by having faction wars, and these were only in the first year of the game. Basically, you would just have a week where you align to a faction, and you would go and earn reputation and turn in tokens for them. And at the end of the event week, one faction would win it, and the group that was pledged to that faction would get a cosmetic reward as a result. Now, during these events, you could still earn like faction weapons and faction armor and stuff like that. You could earn an emblem for pledging to each one for the first time. There were shaders that you could earn, although these weren't rare like in Destiny 1. Like they were just kind of given out to anybody who leveled up a couple times. But I still thought this was cool. I would have preferred for factions to just be like a thing that was in the game constantly, but I did appreciate them being in the game in any capacity still. After the first year of Destiny 2, factions completely disappeared from the game up to the point where I was talking about in Season of the Splicer, where the future war cult were actually relevant in the story, slash their leader, really. And I know I've said this before, but Bungie's solution to Destiny 2 has always been kind of to just continuously pump more and more content into the game. And trust me, I understand that's like, that's a good thing, objectively speaking. Like, the game getting new content is obviously good. But if you don't invest into things like this for the game overall, like just core game experiences that anybody can experience at any time, it doesn't matter how much seasonal content you pump into the game or anything like that, because eventually it's all just going to run dry. Like, you can only play an activity that's going to be around for a few months so much until you've gotten everything that it has to offer. And obviously, that's something that you risk with Future War Cult, Dead Orbit, and New Monarchy being in the game as well. But the idea is that every single time there's a major expansion, these factions get updated to have new weapons, new armor, new shaders, new ships, new cosmetics to chase. And it continues to keep the game alive throughout the years by giving you more and more to do and more to earn from these factions. Destiny 1 only existed for 3 years, so it's a small sample size compared to Destiny 2's many, many years of existing at this point. But throughout the entirety of Destiny 1's existence, factions were regarded highly and something that the community really enjoyed its existence. And Bungie has kind of experimented with bringing factions back. In the recent expansion, Renegades, they added 3 factions to the game, and you can align to one of them and go earn reputation and stuff like that for them in the Renegades Lawless Frontier activity. And this is definitely a step in the direction that I'd like just something to bring factions back to Destiny. But I really want New Monarchy, Dead Orbit, and Future War Cult to come back. I'm not really a big fan of any of the new factions on that level. Like, I feel like those factions just don't really have the depth or anything like that New Monarchy, Future War Cult, and Dead Orbit had. And frankly, they're just not really as iconic and don't bring back the nostalgia for a lot of Destiny fans. But regardless, I think Bungie should really look into bringing back factions as something that just kind of helps keep the game feeling a little more fresh with every single update. It's something that they would have to invest in for years, and I understand that, like just keeping the factions refreshed. And I'm not saying every single update that comes to the game has to add new faction weapons, new faction shaders, and stuff like that. But just like when they get around to doing major expansions every year, they need to make sure that those factions get updated if they were to ever do this. This video is something that I've been wanting to make for a really long time because this is something that I'm genuinely passionate about Destiny. Like, I've always loved factions and I've wanted to see them return to the game in a big way for so many years. So I definitely enjoyed what they did with Renegades, but I'd like to see them continue to do it and to, obviously, like I said, just bring back the original factions. This is probably one of the most passionate videos I've made. So if you guys enjoyed this, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and once again, just want to say thanks for all the support recently on my recent videos. Thanks.